Hello. Very briefly, I'm going to go through ideas of information literacy, and then I'm also going to go through your information literacy assignment for this week. Both 316 business writing and 312 technical writing are completing this assignment this week, so I'm going to make one video for both classes. I'm going to use the business writing shell, although the steps I engage with will look very similar in technical writing. So our librarian, Michelle Santamaria, has created for us a library page, which is very fantastic. This is available here in the course introduction. It opens up as embedded in D2L, and you can also navigate to it through the library pages. So if you go to the library homepage, you click on Research Guides. Under English, you'll find My Research Guide. All of this information is very helpful, but what we're going to focus on right now is this information creation as a process. When we talk about information creation as a process, what we're talking about is the way we develop our thesis, the way we research information to support the points in our paper, the kinds of information that we find to support that particular paper, and how that paper looks when we submit it to that particular discipline. All of those have very specific ideas behind them. We'll use certain kinds of research to support arguments in certain areas. So if you are a music major, using a business article from a business peer-reviewed journal may or may not be helpful to your topic. Using a biology article probably will not be as helpful unless you're dealing with something specific to biology and possibly playing an instrument. So what we're looking for when we deal with information creation is what information is valid, who is it valid to, and how should that information be presented. The next piece that we're dealing with and what we're specifically focusing on this week is how are pieces of information connected to each other so that you can use those connections in your paper. The worst way to complete research is to come up with key terms and pull the first 10 articles from the list and then integrate them into your paper. There's absolutely no guarantee there's any kind of connection between those 10 sources, or 5 sources, or 2 sources. It all depends on what the requirement is. What you want to do instead is look through the source material and say, how is this dealing with my topic? And then how can I connect that to these other pieces of information so that it ultimately supports my point without tangential discussions in my paper, because that's when you start to lose points because your paper doesn't make sense as a whole. So what the librarians have created for us that's really great is a flow chart for going through all of this information. So we're considering the characteristics of information resources that indicate how and for whom they were created, because information has a given audience. So I was on the internet the other day, yay Facebook, and there was an article that I saw posted, and I know I talked about this a little bit in class, that said the more avid a Harry Potter fan, the less likely that individual will vote for Trump. If we deal with this as information being created for a specific audience, one of the questions we need to ask ourselves is, who was the audience that's going to find a headline like that and that type of information important and meaningful? Is it going to be important for an English class? Probably not. That's why I'm using it as an example now. Is it going to be important for a class on big data? Probably, because that's the kind of information or that's the kind of data support that was used in this article. Are most political science majors and political science theorists going to rely on an article like this that I'm pretty sure was published by Huffington Post as a new way to make predictions about how voters are going to vote? Probably not. These are the questions we're asking so that we can understand how to make sense of information. We already do this. We just now need to be more aware of the processes we engage in as we go through this academically. So the first question, how might the process influence the kind of sources you will use? This is really important because you need to consider your audience when you do this. Your audience has specific expectations for the sources and how you connect the sources of information. So ask yourself this question over and over again. Why did the author select this format for the publication of your work? So when you find an article, you don't just want to read it and use the conclusions. You also need to ask questions about it so you understand what was the intention of the author, so you know how to integrate that back into your work. How and for whom was the information produced? And then you can see here the cycle of revolving research. And what you'll notice is that there are times when it goes in a loop. There are times when you move forward and then you also have to step back and re-ask yourself a question, where you find an article which helps shape your thesis in a specific direction, so you maybe need to get rid of a different thesis, or you need to change your keyword search, or you want to find more sources who have cited that really good article that you have found. It's a revolving process. So to practice this, I have designed a game for us to play. So the assignment for this week is the information literacy quest. So I used the 316 shell to initially show both classes where to find the library link. I'm going to use the 312 assignment here, although the assignments are similar. So background information. To experiment with ideas of information literacy, we're going to work through a series of levels to complete a quest. So your job is to work through 3 levels, and there's a series of steps within each level. So level 1, you're going to experiment with ideas of information literacy. We're going to work with a game called 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon, and we're going to work specifically in Wikipedia and play the game 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon. So what is 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon? When you play it out loud or you play it face-to-face, although this example also works through Wikipedia, you start off with an actor's name. So in this case, I'm going to start with Ryan Reynolds. You then need to connect Ryan Reynolds all the way back to Kevin Bacon, and you need to do it in less than 6 steps. That's where the 6 degrees comes from. So Ryan Reynolds, and I say this down below, I went through a series of steps before I found this path, and that's okay. That does not mean you lose, and that does not mean you fail this assignment. What I want you to do instead is to write down everything that you think and every step that you take, even the false starts. So Ryan Reynolds was in the movie The Proposal with Sandra Bullock. Sandra Bullock was in the movie Gravity with Ed. I knew if I went through Gravity, I would have access to a certain type of actor that I knew Kevin Bacon had acted with. But what I couldn't remember was whether Ed Harris was in Gravity or not. So this step really did take me a while, searching through the Wikipedia page for the movie Gravity to figure out that Ed Harris was actually in it. Then I could connect back to Kevin Bacon because Ed Harris was in Apollo 13 with Kevin Bacon. So with a lot of thought and a lot of time spent on this Gravity page, I was able to complete my 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon in 3 moves. I win the game, which is always very exciting. So I would have written down, or in this case I told you guys, but I want you to write down every single step that you go through to connect those 2 particular pieces. So what I want you to do for your practice level 1 of this assignment is you all are going to connect the technical writing page, because it's a really, really strong page, to Benedict Cumberbatch. There are several different ways of connecting these 2 particular pages depending on what you know about both ideas. So I'm very interested to see what you guys choose. So again, open up the technical writing page on Wikipedia. So you go to wikipedia.org, you'll type in technical writing, and then you'll use the hyperlinks on that page to hopefully, in less than 6 steps, end up on the Benedict Cumberbatch Wikipedia page. Make sure you write down every move that you make, including ones you have to redo. Having to redo steps or taking more than 6 steps is not going to make you fail this assignment or fail this particular portion of it. Instead, I just want you to write it all down. Write down every move that you explore, everything that you stop and think about, how much time you spend on the pages, what it is you're looking for on particular pages, what kinds of information you're attempting to connect between these pages. You're going to write all of that down. Eventually, all of that will be sent back to me in the email assignment that's due at the very end of this particular week. Once you've completed this level, you are 25% done with the assignment. If you have any questions about level 1, feel free to send me an email, or you can always send me a tweet. As you're going through these steps, especially if you're having fun or especially if you're frustrated, tweet about it. Use your weekly tweets while you're working through this level. Level 2 is the more complicated one, and it's where you're going to spend the majority of your time. And there are a series of steps to help you see where you need to spend all of your time. The goal with level 2 is for you to respond to one peer, and for that peer to respond to whomever they want. But I want every single peer who posts on time in the discussion board to have one reply from another peer, because you're going to need that data later. So step number 1, you select the pages that you want to connect. Your job is not to stump us. Your job instead is to find a way to connect two different words in a way that is unique to the user. So the user can really think about, how do I see these two pieces of information connecting, so that they can play around with the thought process of how information connects, so we can use that same thought process when we're writing research papers. You'll then post that into D2L. Each student should start their own thread. Once you've started your thread, you'll go into someone else's thread, so we're going to say classmate B, and you're initially going to post a comment. Dear classmate B, I am working with your words. Thank you, Dr. Fanninsteel. That has to be completed so that we're all not working on the same thing. Then start working with their words. So you'll apply 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon with the words chosen by your peer. In this case, I chose classmate B. So I will write down every move that I make for classmate B's. I will write down everything that I explored, every place that I was stumped, every place that I just sat there and stared at Wikipedia until I thought of a connection that I could use. I will write all of that down in step number 4. I will then turn that into a cohesive narrative, and I will reply again in the discussion board to classmate B. Dear classmate B, the connection between your words was really interesting. Here's the path I took. Here's where I ran into problems. Here's how I see these particular pieces of information connecting. At this point, now that I've completed level 2, I've posted my peer response, check all of the due dates because they're posted in D2L. I am 80% done with this game. Last step, level 3. You're going to tell me from level 1, what steps did you go through? What did you learn? What did you learn about information literacy? Refer back to the librarian research process. How did you move forward and come backwards? How did you move forward 2 steps and come back just 1? Or how did you move forward 2 steps and have to come back and start over? How did you see these pieces of information connecting? And what does that teach you about connections between information pieces? And how did this influence your selection of words for level 2? The next paragraph of your email is going to be a discussion of your peer experience with your word selection. So I posted mine on, and classmate C used my words. I will go back and see, what did classmate C write about my words? Where did they have problems? Where did they experience positives? And how can I use that? Then I'm going to talk about what surprised me about their choices. I put these 2 words out there, so in this case, technical writing and Benedict Cumberbatch, and I have expectations for how you will connect those 2 particular pages. But you might not do it in that way, so whatever you choose to do is going to surprise me, and then I'll reflect on that. How do I understand information in a certain way? How did you understand information in a certain way? The goal is then to consider, how do you need to write connections between information and then connections back to your thesis in a researched essay so that your reader is not confused by your connections? This particular paragraph is really important for us to understand ultimately how information connects when we write research papers. The second question, how did you expect the information to be connected, and how did your peer choose to connect the ideas, and what's surprising about that? Again, I want your conclusion to be, here's what I understand now about how to connect information in a final paper. The last paragraph of this email is going to be a final reflection on the assignment. How do you now understand information literacy? What new thing did you learn? What new skill can you take with you to research papers in all disciplines? To all locations that you might need to write a research paper for even this class where you're ultimately going to write a research paper towards the end of the semester. What do you now understand about information literacy, and how can you use that moving forward? How do you understand the library graphic on information literacy after playing this game? And how will this help you be a stronger researcher for academic papers? This final email should be emailed to me by Sunday, 9/11 at 11:59 p.m. Once you've sent me that email, you've completed 100% of the quest and you win the game. If you have any questions about information literacy, post them to Twitter and we'll address them there. If you have any questions about the assignment, post it to Twitter and I'll address it there. Others in the class might have the same questions. If the question goes beyond Twitter and you need to send me an email, feel free to send me an email. I will see you guys online, and I'm so excited to see the connections you make between technical writing and Benedict Cumberbatch.